Hello, everybody. Welcome to a very, very special video here at Guiding Star Astrology, where we are going to be exploring all things Egyptian astrology and healing. And to do so, we have the wonderful Patricia Awyan Lehman here with us. Patricia, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Patricia's joining us all the way from Egypt, where she lives. Patricia, you are the founding director of Horus Rising. Do you want to share a little bit about what you do before we dive into our topic for today?
Oh my goodness. Well, sorry, there was a pause. Um, yeah, it's amazing. I've actually lived here for 15 years now, and so many different things have developed since that time. I've known my whole life that Egypt was home, and so when I finally, the opportunity presented itself, I basically jumped in with both feet, which was an experience in and of itself. But after being here for so many years, I my entire life has been dedicated to answering all the questions I had as a child. As why are we here? What is this all about? What is reality? And so all my life I've been studying, the metaphysical sciences, the academic sciences, and in some way trying to bring science and spirituality together, because I seem to have a mind that is excited about both, but sees that some of the issues and the problems that we seem to face today are caused by separating the two. And if we can somehow marry spirituality and science, we'll find a way to come back to our center. And I think, we're talking about healing today, and that's what healing's all about, is coming back into balance and harmonic resonance, and getting back to our hearts. So yeah, since I've been in Egypt, I have been in the temples. I can't countless times, the pyramids, researching, studying, leading tours, speaking to groups, because I now have a passion about sharing all the knowledge I've acquired over, this amount of time, my whole life, but in Egypt, really dedicated to what's here. As well as my travels all over the world and seeing the same dynamics and the same patterns. It is an exciting time to be alive, because this is the time that we're bringing back the ancient knowledge. And the ancient knowledge is has such a much greater depth than any of us have been told, in our educational processes of today, our current educational processes. And so it is an individual journey that, you have a choice to take a look at something deeper. And we have so many healing therapies, alternative healing therapies, that are just incredible. But what I've discovered is almost all of them are based on ancient knowing.
Isn't that
What the
amazing?
it's so beyond anything we would have been or could have been introduced to, because of where we're at in our perception of timelines.
Wow.
So yeah, it is exciting, Kesenya. And I'm so excited that you're going to be coming, and I'm going to be showing you all of these things and then comparing them to the knowledge that you're bringing in, because what you do is so essential. It was second nature to them. They worked, they moved, they knew that everything above was the same as what's happening to us below. In fact, it is a dance between the two that gives us this perception of reality. And that coming to center is really balancing what's happening, what we are seeing happening in the stars, which is a map of what's happening to us here on Earth.
It's so beautiful, isn't it? Like how they marry together. And yeah, for those who don't know, who are new to my channel, Patricia and David Warner Mathisen, my partner, and I are joining together to host a tour to Egypt in November this year. And Patricia regularly hosts esoteric tours of the ancient sites in Egypt, sharing her wisdom, sharing her knowledge. Patricia was married for many years to a member of the ancient wisdom keeping families in Egypt. So she's got so much of that beautiful ancient wisdom to share with us, plus David with his mythology and his knowledge of the esoteric sciences pertaining to Egypt too. And of course, myself with astrology. You don't want to miss this tour. It's going to be so exciting. But today, Patricia, we're focusing on healing, and you've had some instances in some of your tours where you've gone into some of the ancient sites and people have experienced profound healing. Do you want to share a little bit about some of those experiences to kick us off?
Well, I absolutely do. And we decided we wanted to talk about healing today and focus on one site in Egypt. So I will try and direct all of my energy into that particular focus.
There's just so much we could talk about. We had to try and narrow it down to how do you condense 3 weeks in Egypt into like an hour?
Yes, exactly. But what I'm going to talk about today is the site of Saqqara, which is it's a huge complex here in Egypt, and it's in alignment with all the pyramids. There's like a line of pyramids. Stephen Mailer, who, Kesenya just mentioned that I was married into a wisdom keeper's family, and that was, you might be familiar with the name Abdel Hakim Awyan. His knowledge was just incredible. And he talked about this line of pyramids, and it goes from north to south as the land of Osiris, and so much more. And there's, and again, we want to stay on topic today, but Saqqara is part of that, and it sits in a space that's incredibly sacred. In fact, our word sacred could come from the word Saqqara. And Saqqara also comes from the word Sokar, who is an aspect of Osiris when he is in a state of non-motion, total stillness, which is part of the patterning of life. It's the waveform that makes up everything that exists within us and without, right? It's all of this, and it comes to a moment of silence, just like we experience in our cycles of time and our perception of time and space. Like our solstices, which means silent sun. Sokar represents that silent moment, and it's that moment when we come back to center. So this is what the site, in a way, is all about. Some would call it death, right? The moment that the energy stops moving. But in truth, the ancients had no word for death. That was a word developed later. And I always encourage people to ask yourselves if you can remember back to the moment when you were told, whether it was in a church or whether a synagogue or by your parents or wherever it might have been, that you were going to die and that they were going to die, or your brother and sisters. That is a life-changing moment. And then they go on to say that there's judgment. And the truth is, the ancients of Egypt, the very ancients, had no word for death. They actually called it westing, as in, we see the movement of the sun, the stars, the moon rising on the horizon and setting only to rise again the next cycle. That there is no end, only eternal cycling.
So when you mention the very ancient Egyptians, what era are we talking about? Is that like 3,000, 4,000, 5,000? How long ago?
Oh, well, we could go on for hours about that. It's related to the cycles of the great year.
Yeah.
That makes any sense to anyone. But we're talking about a time period when we were more right-brained and we had a consciousness that was more intuitive and connected. I call it unity consciousness. And it's that moment, we feel our connection to everything that is, the stars that move in the heavens, to what's happening here on earth. We feel it. We know how to navigate those currents. We know how to harness them to create harmonic resonance and health. So this is actually when they build these healing centers, when they build the ancient sites, we see the pyramids, we see these structures, and they're actually harnessing the energy of form, of shape, of color, of consistency of rocks, of underground moving water. They choose their sites because of the energy of the area. And that's why you see sites on top of sites, or sites below sites below sites, because it's the site that's important. And so, again, Saqqara was chosen for that reason. Time period, I would take us back to, we're talking back to the age of Cancer, going into Gemini, going into Taurus. Taurus is the moment, the age of Taurus is when we fall into form almost entirely. And our perception of who we are, we lose our connectedness. And this progression from right brain to left brain takes hold. And left brain is more of a separation consciousness.
Mm.
So we begin to identify ourselves with our body. We actually think we are our bodies.
Yeah.
Where the ancients before this realized that we are connected, we are all aspects of one divine source.
Yeah.
So we had this way of living in peace. Hakim would say we were all sesh. We all were just sesh and we all were equal. There was no hierarchy.
Real
And then
golden
suddenly we fall
age.
into
Oh.
exactly real golden age,
Mm.
knowing consciousness from within.
Mm.
When you look at the natures, natures, forces of nature. They didn't see them. Well, we call them gods and goddesses. They called them netters or natures, forces of nature. And they didn't see them like we would revere a god or goddess today, worshiping them as a force outside themselves. They revered them as forces that were within.
Oh.
So
I
there's a
love
whole
that. That's the whole premise of the latest book David's written, actually. The gods are within us, and it's just such a powerful realization to understand that. If anyone wants to buy David's book, it's available through his website and through Amazon.com. But yeah, it's just such a powerful knowledge. And I love your reference to the age of Taurus as being that drop down age, because if we look at a lot of the iconography around, we see a lot of bulls in what we call ancient sites and sculptures and things like that. And then, and that age of the bull, the age of Taurus was such a pivotal time points. There's a lot of bulls in Egyptian iconography, isn't there? But there's also lions, which goes back, back further, into the golden age. I think if I'm not wrong, the golden age is sort of from Libra, Virgo, Leo, across that 6,000 year time frame. But I may be wrong. You could correct me on that if I'm wrong, Patricia.
come to Egypt.
Sorry?
When you come to Egypt, I can show you what's there and you can decide for yourself, because that is the typical way of understanding it. And that is the place of the golden age, but it's not, in my opinion, what we think it is. The timeline is different.
Ooh.
This is what's so amazing when you understand what they put before us. It makes us really double think about everything we've been taught. Time is not linear. That's the first key. And they let us know this. So yeah, that we'll have fun and we'll have discussions. I really look forward to it because it's such an interesting topic. It took me forever to have the courage to step forward and start talking about it. And since then, I've found so many astrophysicists and different organizations that believe exactly the same.
I am so excited. I'm just so
understanding
excited.
the patterns.
Sorry, we've got a bit of a lag. I'm sorry about that. You carry on, please.
All three of us will have fun with that. Because I'm still always playing my own devil's advocate. I don't just trust that I see something and believe it. But the more I've studied the patterns here in Egypt, the more I've realized that when I see the pattern, I see what's coming, and I start to have these aha moments. But now when I Google and research it to look for the confirmation, I'm confident that I will find exactly what I thought I was going to find.
Wow.
Because once you see the pattern, it can't be away. So anyway, fascinating. And this is what we've learned about structure as well. So I think the best way to go forward is to open up. I did a little presentation with pictures. So I can actually show you the site and what's available. So let me do a share screen.
Oh, beautiful. Oh, what a
so
stunning
achieving
sight.
Anyway, I'm not used to sharing with a Zoom screen, so thank you.
Bit different, yes.
Yeah. So achieving Ma'at was really achieving harmony and balance. This is what she represents. We hear about the laws, the 42 laws of Ma'at, but it's, you know, Hakeem would look at you with a silly little grin and he would just say, you know, if you're living in complete peace, you don't need laws. So the concept of laws comes later when there is a need, when there is a system that develops a set of laws, borders, boundaries for how we can operate within this perception of reality. But in truth, when we're living from the heart in a right brain consciousness, there is no need.
I look forward to going back into the right brain
so again, new
consciousness.
ways. I can hardly wait.
Yeah.
And people, I've heard that if if you're left-handed, start using your right hand, and if you're right-handed, start using your left hand to do things, and you begin to entrain your body to basically come back into balance. And that's another topic we can talk about too. There are so many topics, so much fun we can have.
Well, you said last time we were chatting, Patricia, that the move into right brain consciousness may very well come with the age of Aquarius that we're entering into, when there's going to be a shift back. And you spoke of alchemy being related to the age of Aquarius and the age of Leo, because if you don't mind me sharing this, this is from your wisdom. So that Aquarius is ruled by Saturn, which has a governance of lead, whereas Leo, the opposite sign, is ruled by the sun, which is all about the gold. And then this mutation era, if you like, from one side of the brain to another is what true alchemy is all about. Have I understood you correctly when we were talking about this last time?
You're sharing it in a beautiful way, but absolutely. And that is the key to the patterning I was talking about. Because if we look at all the patterns, even of the earth, of the sun, and how it moves on the ecliptic, it's a sine wave pattern. And what we know with the sine wave waveform, which is the foundation of everything, waveform goes up and then it reverses direction and goes down.
Absolutely.
So the key right now is we're at Aquarius. Aquarius is rock bottom. It's ruled by Saturn, lead, density. So we're at our densest. If you look in the heavens to the circumpolar stars, the axis of the Earth has now come around the circumpolar stars, and it's now pointing at Polaris. Where does that word come from? The true polarity. We at our greatest point of isolation and separation from each other. And you can almost see that and feel that in the world today. You know, the chaos that exists within what's happening seemingly everywhere on the planet. And that means we're at the reversal point, because it literally can't be any other way. So how do we reverse? We reverse the motion. And so we move from that separation back. And that is true alchemy. And that is a movement. I always say it's a journey of perception. And our scientific brains want to make it about the earth. And I bring up the earth because it is a pattern in the heavens that is definitely mirroring what's happening, both directions. But it's really a journey of perception. And I think what the ancients, and you can relate to this, especially with the Vedic traditions and their depth of knowledge about meditation and how we can change our levels of conscious awareness, as they say in any great yogic breath, which is related to a very ancient symbol here called the Simatuli, that also represents the great yogic breath. And the message within it is we can change our perception of reality in any great yogic breath, an intake or outtake of breath. And, just breathing out, if you breathe with me, we breathe out into separation consciousness. We breathe back into our center. And at both moments, as you breathe out, there's a moment of silence and then a reversal of direction. You come back to center, you're in your heart. That is your greatest connection with unity, with unity, that's source, right? That is your moment, that great moment of silence, again, when you're at your height of consciousness, and then you breathe out again. And it's eternal cycles. And Hakeem said it will always continue. Nothing, there's nothing new under the sun. And I sort of, this was years ago, folks, more than 15 years ago, I sort of raised my hand and said, oh, that sounds so depressing. That means there's no area for change or growth. And he sort of smiled again and he grinned and he said, oh, but we spiral.
Yeah, that's the
So,
difference, isn't it? And it's powerful to realize that there's a ever arching upwards. I just love it. I love it. But do tell us more about this site and this beautiful statement you've got here that the ancient sites are alive and interacting with us. I love this.
Well, I start out this way in this discussion because, as I said, they knew how to harness the currents to basically choose the site and build their structures in a specific way that it creates an energy that interacts with us. This is huge. And so the site of Saqqara is actually, it's designed with all its elements to create an environment so that that can bring our bodies, minds, and spirits back to center. So it's basically a centering device within a structure. And so what we're looking at right here is part of it, a very small part of the entire structure. But right in front of us is the patient's table. And it was one of 11 that this is the only one that survived. And again, as I said, we harness the forces of nature, the Neteru, in order to create magic. And Hakim would always say, sound, light, and running water were the elements at every site. This is what they're harnessing. And we're going to have so much fun with this. But this is at sites all over the world. And I've used these images on the far right just to show these are very, very ancient water wheels. I've heard many different estimations on how old they are, but at least hundreds of years, if not older, and possibly rebuilt on something that was even more ancient. But it's harnessing the energy of the water, right? It's a more modern way of looking at it. We still do it today, but when you're harnessing the forces of nature, you're working in sync with nature, which is so different. We call it implosive energy, which is keeping everything in sync and in balance and in harmony with what's happening in your environment. There's no damage to your environment because you're utilizing it in some way to be beneficial to you, where explosive energies are damaging to the environment. Like synthetic foods, like, you think of any of our things, our synthetic medicines, we found cures, and we're actually today in medicine, we're looking to cure symptoms and as quickly as possible. So we immediately take something that's going to make us feel better, but in essence, we don't think about what the possible repercussions are of taking something synthetic. What are the side effects of that particular type of treatment? And again, this is, we've forgotten, and I don't want to go into why we've forgotten, but
that's a whole other topic, isn't it?
That's a whole other topic. But we have forgotten that all of the treatments for most of our medical conditions are, they're available to us in nature through nature's plants, fruits and vegetables, through, just an ability to harness energy. I talk about the Dr. Ibrahim Karim, who was an Egyptian who developed a modality called biogeometry. His work is incredible. I highly recommend people look up the work of just type in biogeometry. You'll find his website. You'll find his books. They're really, truly incredible. And he is bringing an ancient knowing from Egypt back, bringing it forward to help us deal with all of our technologies and all of our things. He can actually negate the effects of things like Wi-Fi and 5G waveform and how it reacts with the body. He has tools for working that you can actually work with some of these technologies that normally, and not everybody feels it. I know I do. I turn my Wi-Fi off at night, but I also use some of his tools. But at any rate, we have these ancient techniques work, and we are bringing them forward today. I think this is the message that I want to bring forward. But what's in front of us now is this structure that was actually capable of bringing us back into balance without all of the other methods that
Just
we
harnessing
utilize
the
today.
natural
So again,
energy at the site, and that was all that was needed, really. No synthetics. How perfect.
no synthetics, but they did know it was an interactive process, that spontaneous healing is possible. You can be cured instantly, but the depth of what is causing your dis-ease, which, just the word disease, gives you an explanation that you are out of balance. You're at a state of disease or in chaos, and you want to bring that harmony back to your body, mind, and spirit. This is definitely possible. But they also knew that we needed to take a look at what caused the imbalance to begin with. So I'll address that as well. But the way this was set up is just incredible. And so what we're looking at here again is that patience table. And then I'm pointing to a niche. And they had 11 niches on one side and 11 on the other side, each one probably, possibly a different purpose. And that's something, we only have what the work that people have gotten to at this point for understanding it, and I will talk about it. But also in front of that niche, there are little labyrinths that take you back to the niche. And that little labyrinth is literally just sort of entraining your brain to come back to center. And that niche is where the healer or the priest, or some would say the Imhotep, would place his head, and I'll explain that in a moment, in order to see the energetic matrix of the patient who would be on the patient's table. And the patient would choose which one of those steps up to the table to go up, and they represent the negative and positive charge of the masculine and feminine energies within.
Wow.
And so that choice has a meaning within what is actually causing your disease. So, so many interesting aspects of this. And if you notice, I have the little image of the niche on the right-hand side. If you look up, over top of the niche is a corbelled ceiling.
Yes.
And corbelled ceilings are known to reflect sound and frequency back down into the being that's there. And that's this ability, because this niche was connected via underground channels of water. And with, all the different energies that are flowing within the site, but the channel of water would be running to the patient's table. And through that energy, he would be able, as I said, to see the energetic matrix of the patient and then send the proper frequency, tone. It could be a tone, it could be a color, it could be so many different things that he would send to unblock the blockage that caused the imbalance.
Oh my goodness. I have goosebumps, Patricia. That's just astounding. Through color
and then you might
therapy. Sorry, we've got this delay, but through color therapy, through sound therapy. Gorgeous. Wow.
Well, exactly. They're doing these things today and having great success. Sound therapy it works. I've experienced it. But also this site, I've experienced, you asked at the beginning if, what my experience with this was. And I've experienced people healing and myself having these spontaneous healings at this site and other sites in Egypt that utilize similar constructs. And it's amazing to see. And just one example is on my first tour here, there was a lovely older woman that I was helping. We were at the site of Dashur, and there's a pyramid called the Red Pyramid there. And to get up it, it's a long way up, big steps going up to the entrance, and then a long stairway down to a chamber, the inner chamber. And through going up, she literally had to lean on my arm the whole way up. And not the whole way down. She did her best to get down because the channels are very small, but she required a lot of help because she had issues with her legs and her foot. And after she was, we got to this site, and our host, who was Stephen Naylor, said, who wants to be the patient? And she basically ran right up the steps. Funny how she could do that.
She could with her feet.
needed some help, but she got first in line. And she got up and he would say, choose the place, on the table that you're drawn to. And you can sit, you can lay, you can stand. And we would put our heads in the niche. And what was interesting is this was my first experience. And the first thing I noticed when I put my head in the niche is I could hear this loud noise. And I came out because I was like, there's something, there's a plane overhead, there's a motorcycle somewhere. What's going on? They're destroying my experience. And Stephen Mailer was there and he laughed and he said, that's the connection with the heartbeat of the earth. And
Oh,
it's exactly what it sounds like. So, yeah, truly. And I've had so many people come and skeptical and not thinking that this is totally ridiculous. And the truth is, they put their head inside and they can hear it as well.
wow. And did it change anything? Did you feel lighter or, in
I
any way different from putting your head in there?
Well, I did because it awakened me to this possibility that they had technologies that obviously, as I said, were not damaging, but could heal the body without utilizing the kind of things that we use today. It was sort of like I knew about all the alternative therapies. I had been to all, naturopaths and things like
Yeah.
that. But, that the ancients could do something within a structure was something that was totally new to me.
Yeah.
And then I put my head in the niche and understanding what was happening. And I did see the energetic matrix of the body. I saw the flow, I saw what was happening. And so suddenly, a sound came to me, a color came to me. I started to see things that had happened to her in her life that could have caused the issue. And this is something I've now worked with all my groups that come when we have the opportunity. It so much depends on how busy the site is, how many people are there.
Yeah.
But it is, all I can say is it works. We did the work. Many of us came up with the same conclusions. We sent the tone, the energy, the color, and she was better for the rest of the tour.
Oh, I was gonna
And
ask
it was
how
only
she
one of
got on.
many.
Yeah.
She did. She was excited. She was happy. And it's not the only time. I experienced it many times. And the one time was interesting because another woman, it was a problem with her foot and she was on pain medication. I remember having to stop the bus many times along the tour and, to get her pain medication. And when we went into the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid, we did a harmonic toning. A bunch of us all put our arms around each other and we did harmony. And suddenly we heard this, oh, and she goes, and we look at her, and she says, I think my foot is better.
Oh,
And it actually was. She was fine. And I came to know the woman's daughter very well, and we talked about it several times. And it was about a year later, and I asked because there's another side to the site that I'm going to talk to you about in a moment. And I asked, if she was still healed. I needed to do my surveys, and she said it was after a year that it came back and it came back in spades. And she said she didn't change anything. She didn't look at her life. She didn't change the things that were causing, the stress, and things that were causing it. And so that is part of this is part of the process. So again, I will explain how they address that in just a moment. But first, I want to show you the blueprint for the whole site. And here you can see the image that I just showed you, you can see basically the floor plan of the headset court. And it's called the headset court because it relates, this is a modern term, and I believe it was used for that purpose. Headset was a festival of the king when he becomes a certain age, which is basically about 30 years old, basically, of rulership within the kingdom. We're talking about the pharaoh here, but I'll use the word king. There's a point at which they believe that everything falls out of Ma'at. And this is that battle between Upper and Lower Egypt that they're always talking about in Egypt. And they talk about the king brings Upper and Lower Egypt together, the unification. And what's not understood is that unification is actually talking about the hemispheres of the brain.
wow.
This is what Upper and Lower Egypt really represent. on a much deeper level. And so some of the things the king had to do in this festival, he went through a series of rituals, purification, but also rituals where, you know, and again, we're just looking at what we know to be true, the material that we can read and we've come across. But one of those things is we believe, some of us believe, that he went through a situation and at one time where he would take a plant medicine or something that would cause him to basically become inert, right? Have a near death experience. And if you've ever talked to anyone that had a near death experience, you know, and I had something like this myself. I know many people that have. A lot of them come on my tours because that moment of when you have that experience, so many speak about becoming this feeling of becoming at one with everything that exists in our perception of the universe, with every cell, with every motion. And it's described as this moment of great bliss. And in one of the tombs in the pyramid texts of a pyramid that's actually on the site of Saqqara called the Unas or Wanis pyramid, in the pyramid texts, which are said to be magical writings for taking you through the portal from form into formless into the form. I call it the formulas for moving between the two worlds, the form and the formless worlds. Talk about the cannibal texts of eating, you know, that Unas goes through this process of eating the netters, right? The gods. So they call it cannibal texts. I would say the eating of the forces of nature is an absorption, right? It's an embodiment of that knowing. And in a way, we talk about the kings in ancient Egypt as being gods, right? That they crown them basically as being Horus kings or Horus gods. But the whole concept was you're bringing the power of God down to earth. You're embodying the forces of nature so that you can then understand, harness them. You've been at one with the forces. And in that sense, you have embodied them. So this is what the whole process of the king that he would go through in order to prove to the masses that he had the right to rule, right? Concepts we still use today, but what's fascinating is so many different forms of worship in the world speak to their God as sitting on a throne. And I think it all stems back to this ancient ritual that was probably done. They actually were able to go through this experience without using tools. They started to use tools, and then as consciousness devolves, they lose the ability to actually die and come back to life, because the other part of that ceremony is the opening of the mouth ceremony to reanimate the body. And there's so many scenes of this, and it's Anubis who is the path opener, opening the mouth to return the breath of life, right?
Wow.
And at some point we lose that ability to come back, and that's when they say, oh, the king had to die so his son could rule. And then eventually it just becomes symbolism on the walls of the temples because nobody wants to die, right? So again, progression throughout time and space. But something far, you know, that was so ancient and understood is woven through the threads of everything that was portrayed in ancient Egypt. And it's the cycle of our own lives, and it's the cycle of our sun. So many things are all part of this this whole concept of, you know, bringing the two hemispheres of the brain together, of this moment of complete oneness, and then breathing out again. It all comes back to the great breath of life. And so they harness this breath in order to heal themselves in any now moment.
Can I
Sorry,
ask
that was a lot.
No, no, I'm so fascinated. But can I ask you a question? You mentioned that we fall out of mat around the age of 30. Is that, I mean, we have our first Saturn return around 28 years of age. Is it connected to that cycle of Saturn perhaps, or is it something else that causes us to fall out of mat? And when I think
Well,
about
it could be. And I mentioned, sorry, there was a delay and I started talking. I thought you stopped. I made the mistake of saying age of 30, and I actually meant the age of the rulership, how many years he had already ruled.
Oh, I see.
But the 30 could have some some kind of purpose there. And I haven't quite put my finger on it, because you're right, numbers were incredibly important. But I like what you're saying with the Saturn return, because I have woven that into part of what I talk about, because that Saturn return is basically what we're doing. It's Saturn return.
Yeah.
And when I talked to you about that dynamic, we talked about how those cycles come down to Capricorn and Aquarius both being ruled by Saturn, and diametrically opposed to Cancer and the Sun ruled by
The
the
moon
Moon and
and the
the
sun.
Sun
Yeah.
being so involved. So there's a lot of dynamics. We're going to have fun.
Well, we are. And of course, everything is cyclical. So there are a couple of cycles that I like, that I know, or one particularly that I know of, that is a 30-year cycle, which is in the progressed chart. The progressed moon takes roughly 30 years to do a cycle of the zodiac. So yes, look, we're going to have such a good time exploring all these cycles and concepts, because of course, as you said, everything that they did was tied to the stars and aligned with the principle of as above, so below. So there's got to be some bearing there somewhere. It's quite exciting.
You just hit on it. That was beautiful. Because Osiris, who is basically the netter who experiences all those things as us, we are Osiris. And every Egyptian, when they died, became one with Osiris, whether you were man or woman, because we are in the patriarchal paradigm right now. But what you just mentioned with the moon is Osiris represents sunset. He represents the underworld, meaning he is basically, we only experience him as the reflected light of the sun on the moon. So he is the sun as it's going through the other hemisphere.
Wow. Wow.
Right? That's what he represents. So therefore, he is the moon and the cycles of the moon. And this is why the king. So you've just answered my question. This is what I mean by coming together to connect. It's beautiful.
It's going to be very, very powerful, isn't it? I can't wait to spend some good quality time with you, Patricia. It's going to be great.
We're going to have fun. But very quickly, because I know we're beginning to run out of time, on the far left, I have something circled, and that is the entrance to the whole site of Saqqara. And I'm going to show you something that's so amazing. And again, I'm going to go a little quicker now, but we're looking at the spine of Osiris, the spine of mankind. But when I show you what it looks like on the ground, it's just so dynamic. So within these structures that they built, they're actually taking the flow of the flow of every organ in the body. And there are two people that have introduced this dynamic basically to those of us with ears to hear. One of them was Hakim, and the other one was John Philip Lauer. And I'll show you his picture in a moment. He was an archaeologist that studied and excavated the site in the 1900s, and he came to the same conclusions. So it wasn't just Hakim that said this was a healing hospital or a place to bring, the body, mind, and spirit back into balance, but it was an archaeologist, that's a French archaeologist that studied here as well. I quickly also want to talk about Imhotep, because everyone, he became a netter. He was a man who was an architect and a physician, and I like to describe him as one who, his name means he who walks in peace, harmony. He who walks in harmony. And I have the glyphs for his name. And Hotep, Im means basically I am, I walk in peace, I move. And you can see that the sound E, which is used by Y here, is a walking feather. So he who moves, he who walks in peace. Hotep meant peace. And I have an image I took in the museum, and I loved how it just formed a shadow on the far left. But he was deified because of how incredible he was. I see him as someone who could see and understand not only the energetic matrix of structure, but also of the human body. And so he knew how to harness all of the energies to create an environment that brings us back into balance,
I
which is just
loved the book. I
incredible.
don't know if
So again, this is how it came up in the upper.
I'm going to let you keep talking. I was just going to say I loved the book Initiation by Elizabeth Hayek, I think is how you say her surname, and she refers a lot to Imhotep in that book. But I will let you keep talking because I don't want us to run out of time to get through all these beautiful images.
Well, yes, I know. There's just so much we could talk about. So here I actually, I have this wonderful image of cymatics, and you can use sand, you can use water, but it's showing you how tone and sound create images in these elements that we can actually see them forming these wonderful patterns. But our bodies are made up of, some say 70 to 90% water, but we're made up of energy and motion. We are the body electric. So when we use tone, and the other thing I really want to say is this waveform, and this is groundbreaking knowing that the ancients knew it, the primordial waters of consciousness, right? Where we all emerge from. This is indigenous knowing from all over the planet. But today our science is finally agreeing that yes, energy, waveform is conscious. So that waveform, depending on how you interact with it, your healer, is that healer filled with love, or is your healer stressed? These things, these elements of healing are so important. Be present in your healing. It's an interactive process. Are you welcoming the change? How is your illness serving you? Are you willing to cut the patterns that no longer serve you any longer? All of these things are things, the energies that the ancients worked with. So yes, and here's this image of John Philip Lauer. He also developed, as I said, this knowing and the idea that they use structure to basically embody the flow of different organs. And this is part of biogeometry as well, this understanding that if you understand the patterns of the flow of your organs and you start to draw them, dance them, play with them, you'll heal that particular organ because you're in the flow, you're in tune with that energy. So this is really profound knowledge for all of us moving into the future on how we can live and work and be in all different kinds of environments and be healthy as energetic beings, you know. We respond to magnetic sound and light. So these are wonderful tools for healing. And sorry, it's funny, every time you begin to speak, Kesenya, is when there's a delay. So I don't often hear you until later.
That's fine. I think we're doing very well considering the dodgy connection we seem to have. So thank you, Patricia.
Well, my apologies for that.
No, it's fine. I'm just loving this. I mean, these beautiful images and this wisdom that you are sharing, like it's just inspiring me. I'm so excited for this trip. But please carry on.
Thank you so much. I love sharing this because it is so profound. I mean, this is what drives me. I am just so passionate about spreading this knowledge to anyone who wants to hear it, because it can have a profound effect on humanity as we move into the future. So yeah, again, this is a closer picture of the sound niche. You can't unfortunately see the little labyrinth. It is small, but it's structured in such a way. And there are even little things that come out of the wall that I've had sound technicians tell me will revolve the sound and frequency around the labyrinth. So they had a knowing that, was just incredible. And this is what needs to be brought back today. And it wasn't just for healing, it was for agricultural processes. They had ways of, growing a seed, from its implantation until, rich harvests by manipulating energy, underground running water, and so many different things that enabled them to have incredible, a survival of a civilization for thousands of years versus the norm is a couple hundred years for any, length of time a civilization can flourish.
Yeah, amazing. are just amazing.
Yeah.
And the
So
structure in
this is what I
itself
promised.
is so beautiful, you know. Look at those little arrowheads along the top, like the intricacies. It's just gorgeous.
And they actually represent closed lotuses, which
Oh.
um, which is actually, in a way, when the lotus is closed, it's saying you're having that moment of silence. So yeah,
Mm.
very important energy. So you're entering a structure that you want to be in that moment. You know, they tell us to meditate because that's the moment we create the moment of silence to get back to center. And that's where the magic happens. And
Mm.
so the structure you're looking at is the structure where you're able, after you have your healing, to actually go within and explore your relationship with your own masculine and feminine sides of self. We are dual beings. We all are both masculine and feminine. Hakeem used to smile and say, there's only 2% difference between you and me. And, you know, we tend to, you know, make that so huge and it's like, you know, men are this and women are that, but we are more alike than we are dissimilar.
Yeah.
And we have that within us. And sometimes things that happened in our childhoods or in our lives affect our relationship with our masculine or our feminine self. So this is a structure where you go in and there's 3 niches. And you go in and you have the opportunity to put your head in one niche that it represents your feminine side and your relationship with that feminine. And the same with the masculine. And then you put your head in the center one, and that shows you what it feels like to be in complete balance and harmony. And in a way, it's showing you, it's giving you the tools to bring yourself back to balance so the disease does not return. And
Oh.
that's a huge part of the healing process.
Mm. Yeah. And keeping that balance, maintaining that balance after the healing process, is that a hard thing to do?
I think if you don't have the awareness that it exists, it is difficult.
Mm, mm.
And what I've noticed with this structure, because you know, when I can, my smaller groups, I take them in and you know, I try to give the space, hold the space for everyone to have the experience. And afterwards, we'll talk about what everyone sees. And it's really amazing that I find so many people do get to the root of what has caused their problems. And it's very similar to hypnosis, which
Wow.
also has the ability to take you back to those moments when everything falls out of balance, whether it is, you know, a feminine relationship that you had in your childhood, where maybe someone literally destroyed your ego or your sense of self, or it could be a sister, it could be a mother, it could be a father that mistreated you, or a brother or an uncle. But that moment rearranges the cells and the energy of your body and everything, you know, even to the point of what you're doing in that moment. And this is a message for mothers that if, you know, a child is eating his cereal, you know, with whatever he's eating, and she comes in and screams at the child, that child is in a state of shock, especially if is innocent of whatever it was. But whatever happens, if he's drinking milk at that moment, he can become allergic to milk for the rest of his life because
Mm.
his body associates that moment of terror or shock with whatever he's ingesting in that moment. That's how profound how we walk through life is, to be so totally aware of what's happening, what our choices are, and to actually, if we can have the opportunity to go back, find what set everything out, you know, out of balance and restore it, hug yourself. This is inner child work. This is going back and nurturing the child that didn't understand. You know, and it's not about placing blame on whoever that person was, because we live in a world that is out of ma'at. It's literally forgiveness and restoration. And in a way, it's resurrection, it's renewal, it's rebirthing yourself. And there's another site in Egypt called Kamambo, and this was a place where you were able to experience just that, rebirthing yourself. You know, and different parts of the site were about bringing yourself back into harmony, basically transmuting your polarity to bring yourself back into a balance and, you know, to face your greatest fears
Mm.
and come out of that. and renew yourself as sort of a resurrection. So yeah.
This is very, very powerful. And the words that I hear you using to me speak of eighth house work in astrology. Eighth house is that rebirthing. It's that going deep into the self. It's connected to hypnosis. It's connected to past life regression and work and energy healing. And a lot of people see in astrology the eighth house as a malefic house, but to my mind, it's such a profound healing house. And I think perhaps the malefic connotation comes from a lack of knowing about this ancient wisdom, you know, because this is power. This is,
I agree with you.
Yeah, power to have to have healing, but to also evolve out of the lower state of being into your higher state of being. Just beautiful, beautiful.
Yep, that's it. That's exactly it. And yeah, I love that. And you know, 8 is such an important number of regeneration.
Yes, it really
Huge.
is.
It's basically reminding us again, transmute our polarity, find our center. These are expressions that just relate to that Kundalini rising, is bringing your two parts of self in a way. There's so much more to it. And you know, the other thing about healing in ancient Egypt was this understanding that, you know, their focus was on healing the endocrine system, which are the chakras, our inner suns. That is all part of this rising, you know, raising your Kundalini, and finding that portal between the two worlds, all connected.
And this image on the left here is quite amazing. It looks to me, sorry, the image that we were just looking at looks to me like he was holding Scorpio and Capricorn, the goat, and Leo, the lion, symbology in his hands, which is fascinating. Do we have a moment to talk about that image?
Yes, that was the first thing David said. I think I might have shown that image in our the last time the three of us came together, a podcast. And
you've got a good memory, Patricia, a very good memory.
Well, it is an interesting thing, and I've thought the same thing myself. It's not always the same animals, but it is transmuting. You know, I like to say, and I do think there is a relationship, most definitely, with, I think it's actually the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac, but different ways of expressing it. It's earth, air, fire, and water, but so many different things too. Where was I going with that? Basically, you know, so many people today say we have to kill the beast, and we see these images of St. George killing the beast. What the beast is a dragon, and the dragon is Draco, and it's the circumpolar spin. And killing the beast means stopping the chaos, stopping the spin for a moment of moments to come back to our center. And so we misunderstand that, and we think we have to kill, you know, get rid of the evil within us. But you get rid of the evil, it's, you know, it's two sides of the same coin. It's all you. And it's not getting rid, you know, it's the white wolf and the dark wolf. It's that same knowing, which one will you feed? Because they're both part of you. You know, we have, in order to exist in this world of movement, we have to have both sides to self. But it's learning how to harness the energies within. You know, and to be aware of our choices, and to be aware of our connectedness and what happens, the ripples of our choices. So yeah, it's a different way of living, and it's not killing the beast, it's transmuting it.
I love it. Sorry to hold you up again with another question.
Oh, no, I'm glad you point those things out. So sometimes I get into that thought that I have to rush, and then I miss the good stuff. So, thank you. Really important. So as I said, this is just relating, this slide is relating to the whole headset concept, that it was exactly the same thing of coming and bringing ourselves back to center. And that image in the top center is an image of the top of the head of a pharaoh who has earned his cobra, and that is basically the Kundalini exploding out of the pineal. Of course, that cobra has to come back within, shoot down, connect all your chakras and out of the head chakra to create your next cycle. That's a very quick representation of the whole entire process, and I apologize for that. But what I have on the right is this king, and it's Ramses II. We see him everywhere, and of course, as the ram, he represents Aries, and Aries says, "I am." So we see him everywhere, and he is sitting on the throne, and he's wearing the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt to show that he has brought the power of the Neteru down to earth, and he is a walking netter. He is a force of nature. And we like to say he thought he was a god, but we misunderstood what that actually meant. He's saying he has the right to rule because he knows how to harness, navigate, feel the forces of nature. And this is actually an image from Luxor Temple, which is celebrating the divinity of the king. But by divinity, again, I'm talking about power and capability. And yeah, that's what it's all about. We're basically learning how to walk in our power again. We have forgotten how powerful we really are. Every single one of us can embody the forces of nature. We can learn how to feel them. We can use tools today, but eventually our need for tools goes away when we begin to feel, till we move into right brain consciousness and we feel the energies around us and we walk in peace, because we know that is the way that benefits all of us, every aspect of ourselves. Because I am your mirror and you are my mirror. We are all one and the same, and we're bringing ourselves back into that the full conscious knowing of working in unison.
So beautiful. So beautiful. I love this. Oh, I love this image of the
it is beautiful. It is amazing.
Mm.
Isn't it fantastic?
Mm.
Well, yes, isn't it? Because and again, this is what it's relating to. And the image of the king, that's Khafre. And he was the king that was attributed with building the middle pyramid. We believe that the pyramids are far more ancient, and that the fourth dynasty kings basically came and restored the pyramids, because we know they were, these areas, these structures were quarried for their stones and rebuilt over and over again. Of course, the pyramids were always there, but restored. Just because we have evidence that they put their name on it doesn't mean they actually built it.
That's so true.
And this has been a problem worldwide in archaeology. It is changing rapidly now. It is not the same. But for the longest time, and all the books, they date back to the early excavations. And in academia, it's very hard to go against your peer reviews. You come up with a new idea, and you've got all the guys develop the first idea sitting in front of you saying, you're not going to rewrite my book.
A lot of ego involved, isn't there? I think a lot of the time.
We're in the patriarchal paradigm. And when I say patriarchal, I'm not speaking to men versus women. I'm talking to right brain, left brain consciousness. We all have become patriarchal, not just men. They do say that women do have more, women's intuition, and it's because women have the womb. We have the womb that holds the seed that has the potential of both masculine and feminine. And the womb itself is a creative force of nature that gives birth. And that's what right brain consciousness is. So there is that aspect that, the women are a little bit more intuitive, but there are many, many men that are in harmony with their feminine side, that have that same capability. Obviously, we see this everywhere. And we all have to do the same work. We all have to come back to our heart-centeredness. And I like to say, it's that moment. I call it Sekhmet time. And we don't have time to talk about what that means, but she is the lioness who stands in her power. She's an active force of nature that represents this moment when we tear open our chests and reveal our hearts. We're not afraid any longer to speak our truth, be who we are, and walk in our own power, and bring back unity consciousness. We've been taught to suppress our heart, to suppress our feminine side. The witch hunts were about getting rid of the healing arts, the understanding of herbs and plants and plant medicine, so much more. And this is what we need to bring back into our lives. It's literally time to heal those wounds, and without judgment. Just, this is how energy works. And if we're willing to just heal the wounds and walk together, that's how we bring peace and harmony back.
Beautiful.
I did promise this really quickly. That the entrance, and all of these columns, strangely enough, represent this. Basically, they are the spaces in between the bones of our spine. So it's the spaces in between that actually represent our spine. And there's 42 of them. 42 spaces, and that represents basically the spine of Osiris. And the mythology is that Set cuts Osiris into 42 pieces.
Yeah.
So this is that moment of separation, and the spine, or the axis of the earth itself, falls out of balance. And this is about restoring the balance. And very quickly, I'll explain. I've read papers, and I had this feeling the first time I walked through that, with this spine, with this backbone, I believe that the king, when he was doing his rituals, and we know he did this, we know that they made bread, they made molds with the black earth in the shape of Osiris and Saqqara, all throughout Egypt, all of the 42 divisions of Egypt, which was the spine of Osiris. We are the spine of Osiris, right?
Wow.
They would make bread cakes out of the wheat, barley, and corn, of the seeds they planted in these molds. And they'd make bread cakes, and they would offer these bread cakes as sacred offerings. Take now and eat, right?
Yeah.
The of Osiris. So again, an origin for another ritual that is still practiced today. While Christians practice this, Catholics this communion.
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
and I always wondered, because it was never fully explained. I grew up and was taken to a United Church of Christ, and I couldn't, why are we eating the body of Christ? But now I understand it, because these are the divisions, and this is the unification process. When the king would eat all the bread cakes that were probably on offering tables as you walked through, along with the barley beer or the wine from the grapes that were along the Nile River, that turned blood red with the annual floods. And again, there's so much information within what I'm trying to express, but you take the blood of Osiris, which was likened to that flooding river that was connecting all the individuated aspects of the land, the districts. And it's the same as the spine. And so you take the bread and you take the wine, and you're connecting, you're uniting all your individuated aspects of self in order to bring yourself back to center. And that is the root of what that particular ritual, still practiced today, represents. Fascinating.
I am the same, Patricia. Growing up in a Baptist church, communion always had me scratching my head. Why do we even do this? What is it for? It makes no sense. And I'm not one for ritual that has no purpose. I want to understand why we're doing this stuff, or else it's a waste of my time, or it could be something evil. I don't know. Why are we doing this? And this is just, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. This is like, aha, it comes from ancient Egypt, and it has nothing to do with the stuff that they talk about at church. It's actually a very ancient practice that has meaning, and it's about healing the body. And thank you. Thank you so much for sharing this. You've answered a lifelong question I've always had. I'm thrilled.
Well, I felt the same way, and that's why I'm so happy to share these things. I'm never one to judge or denigrate anything or any dogma or anyone's belief system. But when we begin to understand how these generated through time from ancient knowing and wisdom and concepts, it gives us a greater understanding of why we're still going through those same acts and rituals today. And I
Mm.
believe this time to stop the rituals and start doing this for ourselves, and the knowing of why we're doing it instead of just going through the motions.
Yeah.
And quickly, I'll point out that those cobras that I have in the upper left-hand corner, there is a structure on the other side of this walkway outside across the courtyard that has those cobras running right across the top, and it's on top of what they call the southern tomb, which they call a ritual tomb. It's mirrors. Actually, even the box within it is the same as the one that's in the step pyramid of Djoser or Jesser. And in my opinion, that could have been part of this ritual of a living king entering the box to go through this near-death experience after going through these rituals to come back and bring this understanding of what it's like to feel at one mint, at one mint, atonement, attunement, with all that exists. It all goes back to ancient Egypt.
Doesn't it? Even saying amen at the end of your prayer, like, most modern Christians probably don't realize that amen is Egyptian amen. Ah, I love it. This is powerful. It really is powerful to know these things and understand these things, Patricia.
I feel it. Thank you. So this
Oh,
is the end.
gorgeous. Well, this has been amazing. I know you have an appointment to get to, so I'm not going to keep you too much longer, but there we are. This is what we want to see, this is very, very exciting. Oh, there's David with all his curls. He's cut them off now. This is everybody, if you would like to join Patricia, David, and myself from November the 12th to the 25th this year, then there'll be a link in the description to this video. You can go and check everything out, find the details of all the sites we're going to go to. It's a all expenses paid trip through Egypt, and there's a Nile cruise included. We're going to see all the fabulous ancient sites and get some exclusive access to certain parts of the, for example, standing between the paws of the Sphinx, which I think is going to be just incredible to stand in that spot. And the three chambers of the Great Pyramid, get my words out. Patricia, I am so excited. Thank you so much for sharing that wonderful wisdom. And we're going to get a chance, friends, to experience going to some of these sites of ancient healing, and potentially experience some healing ourselves, which I know I'm excited about, and get back into balance and back into alignment myself. So, Patricia, thank you once again for your time and your brilliance in this beautiful, beautiful presentation. And I do hope that everybody watching can join us in Egypt this year. Patricia, thank you. And we'll have you back again before we go to Egypt to talk more about these wonderful ancient wisdoms that you carry for us to grow and learn and evolve with. Thank you.
Thank you, Kesenya. I really appreciate, your energy, what you bring to the table, and David as well. I didn't mean to leave him out. I cannot wait to experience and talk to him about all of the work that he's been doing. It's literally just going to be an incredible journey for all of us, I think, and anyone who, is able to participate. Because it's even amazing what the group can bring to the table, the different people that come, and they're, just like you shared things that opened my eyes. Every tour, we have this interactive experience with people seeing things that we hadn't seen before. And so each tour brings its own energy and its own magic, for opening doors that are normally closed. And it's always such a pleasure to see how they unfold. And I love coming and talking with you. So yes, that'll be fun to reconnect and continue.
Thank you so much, Patricia. And thank you everybody for joining us for this video. And hopefully you'll all join us in Egypt in November. But until we next meet again, thank you so much, one and all, for being here.